No, it's an art form. I mean, I think the main thing I tell people is, you know, every once in a while you gotta stick your neck out. I mean, you gotta believe in it, and you know, the person who took on, you know, said, I'm cooking mama, I'm gonna go for that, and you know, and you're fighting for a fashion designer game. You obviously didn't win, but there's plenty of people that are gonna throw up roadblocks because they want to say, you know, well, what is it comp against? The word that I hate the most when I hear it come out of, you know, marketing and salespeople. What's the latest comp? I don't know. But that's, at the same time, it's a, like I said, it's a necessary gauntlet. And what you learn from it is if you believe it, and you're gonna have to fight for it, and you try to work different people in the organization to make something happen. And you know, you can be right, you can be wrong, but you know, somebody, you know, a person I used to work for told me, you know, you just hope you're right 51% of the time. That's not a bad average.
And also the game that you see at the retail shelves are a complex alchemy between the love of the developer and the work of the publisher. So if I sign a game and you sign the same game, the end result will not be the same, because what we will put on the table to help the developer will be different. We have different approach, we have different cultures as companies, so that will make different games in the end. So a game that we would have signed, for instance, we released Burnout back in the days. The show would have been such a great job on this particular title. Maybe we have done better, maybe not.
Yeah, when I first started the studio here in Australia, for THQ, one of the games studios that we started working with, and some of you were probably from there, was Pandemic, and we had a relationship with them doing Full Spectrum Warrior in the US, and as part of the deal, we were kind of thrown this bone of doing Destroy Humans. And we looked at it, and there were people internally, and like I said, I thought, wow, it's a pretty cool mechanic, and it was a flying saucer. It was and it's a game that evolved into what it is, you know, when it came out. But it was a lot of hard work. What was interesting was the internal battle I had, where people said, well, nobody wants to play an alien. Nobody wants to be in the 1950s. They don't want to be set in this, you know, you fight all these, you know, sort of conventional wisdom. So what I learned out of that was, you know, believe in what you believe in and fight for it. And, you know, there is an audience for it if it's fun. And, you know, what was interesting, we went to the E3 that year, and it was one of those E3s where it literally was every game was a sequel. And we had this little game sitting there that just stood out from the crowd. The press picked it up, they loved it, and we just had, you know, and it's kind of snowballed from there. And, you know, Pandemic did an awesome job. And again, like I said, another publisher might not have done the same thing with it. We got behind it. We, you know, spent money to market it and advertise it, and, you know, built a really pretty cool franchise.
Cool. Look, just to move on to another question I've actually got here, and it's something that's been quite topical here in Australia for a while. I mean, we don't have an R rating for video games, which means that there's a lot of titles that get refused classification, and they might not even get in here at all. Now, I'm just wondering, as a publisher, I mean, how does this affect the distribution of you know, mature games in Australia? Is this something that you're aware of and you're like, well, we've got to make sure we keep that in mind for Australia, or is it a shock?
It's like, no, we're extremely aware of it. At Vivendi and Activision, especially at Vivendi, we did a lot of very mature games, whether it's Scarface, Riddick. Scarface is particularly Germany and Australia, there are all these issues. So now when we go into a mature rated game, we try to form a relationship with those territories, and the people within those territories can understand what they're going to allow and what they're not. So we'll make a specific non-violent version for Australia, or a non-bloody version for Germany. We pretty much know now what the hit points are, what we're not going to allow, and there certainly is still a gray area that we have to work around, but we try to make 2 versions of the game now so that we're able to distribute in all territories.
Who are those relationships with? Because I think half the time even I'm not sure why gamers refuse classification.
Honestly couldn't tell you. I think it's more of our marketing and sales teams within the territories that form those relationships.
Yep. Is it pretty much the same?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same for us. And our publishing operation here, just they form a relationship with the people who make those decisions. And it's the same in the film business. You're in sort of this negotiation about, does that Is that an R? Is that, you know, and you know, it's hard on the development team sometimes because you're compromising, you know, their vision of, you know, being able to hit somebody over the head with a baseball bat how many number of times or whatever. And so you end up, you know, with, you know, trying to work with them, but it's, like I said, we all know going into Australia and Germany are the two we have to deal with when it comes to ratings.
And unfortunately, sometimes you can't get around that because it does compromise the game too much, so the game won't come out in those territories.
Right. Oh, wow, okay, yes, we have some questions. Who's got the microphone?
I've got a microphone at the back.
You've got the microphone at the back, go ahead.
The games industry learned a lot about middle-aged learners, school kids, particularly 8-year-olds to 10-year-olds, through the Pokemon craze. You know, at first the game wasn't really appreciated until there was a cartoon, and then there were trading cards, and then there was the game, and then there were the books. And, you know, like, it's worth keeping in mind for people who are publishing games that if you're trying to get a game to catch on with young kids, there's other things that you can use to get into the kids' hearts, to get them emotionally involved. You know, there's things like stationery lines or you know, like books or cards, or there's toys. I know food items are banned now. What other things do you recommend to game producers to get, you know, what else is being used in the game industry that's getting kids emotionally involved besides the actual game itself, to get them hooked on the game so they'll buy the game? Do we know a little about that?
I'm not really a marketing person, so it's, you know, each publisher is different, and there are some publishers out there that are the edutainment publishers or that specifically focus on younger demographics. The companies that I've worked for, probably more of a focus on teens and up. So we used to own a company called Knowledge Adventure, and that was focused more on younger kids. But at the same time, we have the Crash franchise, we have the Spyro franchise, so we do try to build up franchise for those demographics. But in terms of marketing and what else we can do, I honestly couldn't tell you.
Yeah, I mean, it's for the game publishers, for the most part, it's not our core competency to, you know, do stationery or something like that, or trading cards. Normally what happens is, if something like a Pokemon or something becomes popular, those companies approach us, and it's usually a licensed relationship. And, you know, if you've created something that has that kind of power and franchise, and people are coming to you, all the better. You know, it does have a snowball effect for that whole property. And Pokemon's one of those classic ones that has just exploded.
Another question?
As a small independent developer, I'm very excited about, you know, XNA and community games and the openness to which, you know, I can get my games on those sort of systems. And I see that as a very positive thing for the industry as a whole. But I heard a very good devil's advocate opinion about that, which was community games will end up hurting the mainstream industry by flooding the market with a torrent of low-cost titles at $2.50, $5 a pop. And consumers will no longer want to pay $100 to $120 for your Fallout 3s. And publishers will have to start lowering costs, which means less profit for you and less profit for those developers. So what do you think about that?
I think I actually think there's room for both. I don't see that effect. I think, you know, what the massive games right now, I think, you know, that, you know, the Fallout 3s and the Halos and you know, the big budget, $10, $20, $30 million. I mean, you're providing a very different experience, visually, emotionally, potentially, than something that's on Xbox Live. But again, I think the gaming audience has grown so fast. I mean, it was, you were kind of embarrassed to admit you were a gamer 20 years ago. Now we're all grown-ups, and we're, you know, it's part of our culture. So I actually don't see that happening. The sort of what the devil's advocate side. I think what we're going to do is, you know, you're seeing more avenues for games on iPhone now. You're seeing it becomes more. It's like a, you know, hey, I'm playing that little iPhone game now. I want to go have my, you know, big experience. I just don't personally see it happening.
Yeah, we're just expanding the marketing, growing the business by all of these different avenues where we can make games and get new people to play them. I think it actually will open up some people who haven't played games before to buying those $60, $100 games.
The one area I can't, it's actually affected